What's going on, y'all? Chuck on Face. Hope everybody's doing great. It's Emerson time. Emerson Knives, Pancho Villa. This is one I wasn't expecting to get. I didn't think I was gonna get it. My friend Doug at the Shutter Doug on Instagram kind of posted some pictures, posted a link to where it was and everything else. I wasn't gonna get this one, but I kind of got sucked in. I haven't bought an Emerson in a while, and this one it just kind of had some unique shapes. Some nice design that just kind of pulled me in. So I ended up picking one up. So this, of course, is the Signature Series. So all that really means is it's kind of the first production run of, there we go, if I can get it in there, Ernest Emerson. It's the first production run of the knife. This one happens to be 96 of number 143. And yeah, we can kind of go into some specs on it here too. It's got a it's listed at 3.8, so I guess I'll go with that. So there's 1, 2, 3 and a half, and a little over 3.5. I guess we can call that 3.8 inches. And it's got about just over 3.5 inches of cutting edge. Actually, basically, almost the whole blade is cutting edge. So if you're going to measure from here to here, it's got almost an equal length of cutting edge on that as well. So a nice blade length on that. I do like knives a little bit bigger, so on the bigger side. So that kind of fits into my wheelhouse too. So that's one of the things that really kind of appealed to me, was it a bit of a bigger blade, and it's got a nice sweeping, I mean, you can call it, that is a clip point, certainly. I wouldn't go so far as to call it a buoy. I always had to think of it, when I think of a buoy, I think of a little bit more of a drop down clip, but it certainly is a clip point. You can call it a buoy if you really wanted to. And yeah, really nice blade profile on that. And then the handle itself, as you can see right there, it's got this run of Emerson's, that is back to some pretty aggressive jimping on there. Not the most aggressive EKI jimping that I've ever felt, but it is on the more aggressive side than some of the other ones that I've handled recently, some of the newer production models. So right there, the action on it. It's got a nice action. A little bit of a pop, a little bit of a lock stick right there. I have posted ways to deal with lock stick, but you can get a little stuff. You can get some ox guard or something like that. It did have some lock stick in it, which is not atypical for Emerson's when you first get them. But it is starting to break in nicely. I did put a little bit of that ox guard on there, on the tang, and it's really helped a lot. So there's a little bit of a pop, but nothing too severe on that. So, oh yeah, let's do some size comparisons real quick. There it is with the Ontario Rat 1. Bigger than the Rat 1. Buck 110. And space those out a little bit. Pretty similar, really, when you get right down to it, to the Buck 110. A little bit longer on the handle, a little bit longer in the blade, but not by much. This is a classic 110, so it's got big, wood and brass, so it's pretty heavy. But it's really not too far off dimension-wise with the Rat 1. Or I'm sorry, the Buck 110. There it is with a Spyderco Para 2. A little bigger than a Para 2, but, not too crazy. And there is a Para 3 right there. So significantly larger than the Para 3, I would say. And also, as you can see, we're looking at profiles. Gonna be smaller, not quite as tall in the blade either. Honestly, I did think it was a little bit taller when I was looking at it in pictures, which kind of appealed to me, but it's a little more slender, a little more narrow than I thought it was going to be. In any case, yeah, here is the CQC8, which is a very popular, very famous model from Emerson. This is actually still one of my favorite Emersons that I've ever had, is the 8. I really just like this one. But there it is with the 8. Pretty similar in size, I would say. It looks like the blade is a little bit longer on the 8. Handle's a little bit longer as well. But there it is there. And let's see, last but not least, there it is with the Sebenza 31. A little bit bigger than the Sebenza. Yeah, so this knife, I wasn't 100% on it when I got it. I kind of got it on a whim and everything else. I kind of got sucked into it, and I was like, yeah, I kind of want that. I haven't had an Emerson in a while. I do want to check this one out. I had seen the ones, and I think it was one of the blade shows that was recently where they were dropping these. with the factory Mexican blanket scales, micarta scales, which look really good, which also fit the Pancho Villa theme quite a bit, or quite well. And so I was looking at them, I was like, yeah, that does look pretty nice. I knew I wasn't going to try to get in on one of those. They're quite a bit more expensive with those scales. And so I wasn't going to try to do that. I figured actually that this was going to be a model that I passed on. But then, you know, I just ended up pulling the trigger on it. And I have to say, I am not displeased that I did it. Ergos are great on it. That is really aggressive texturing. I may leave it as is, or I may just take a couple of passes with 800 or 1000 grit sandpaper. You just take the hardware off. You just, you don't do much. Just a little bit on each side, and you're good to go. And it'll kind of tame that. It'll tame that aggressiveness just enough to make it a little bit more palatable, a little bit more friendly in the pockets. It won't pick up so much DNA from your fingers with that rough texture on there. Yeah, so really not a whole lot more to really talk about with this one. I will touch on this real quick. I had a buddy of mine message me, and I've had this before. Let's talk about grinds on Emerson. So they typically do, on their factory knives, they do two different types of grinds. They do a full chisel, which is going to be ground on one side, and then completely flat on the other. And they always do it as a right-hand chisel as well, where a lot of makers will do the presentation side, or the left side will be flat. And it kind of makes a little bit more sense when you're indexing, when you're cutting, but Emerson doesn't do it that way. They have their reasons. They're never going to change. Nothing I say is going to change that. But anyway, I digress. And the other type they do is the V-edge. Now, however, the thing that you have to realize is unlike a typical V-ground blade or traditionally V-ground blade, which is ground on both sides, and then the secondary bevel is also put on both sides, such as with this Chris Reeve, or this Canigarius. I mean, really, any knife, it's going to be the same thing. Emerson will do the V-edge, and they will put the secondary bevel on one side, and then they will do they won't do it on the other side. So it'll be V-ground on this side. So when you're looking at it, you may say to yourself, like my buddy who messaged me, he's like, dude, is your grind as wonky as mine? Like, it looks messed up, because when you look at it that way, it does look messed up, right? So when you look at a typical, probably didn't choose the best example with a pair of 3. Let me get something a little bit thicker blade stock. That one, okay, maybe the pair of 2. I don't know. But there you go. So this one is V-ground on both sides, secondary bevel on both sides, secondary bevel on one side. If you're not familiar, you think that they might have made a mistake, but they have not. That is the way they do it. You may agree with it, you may disagree with it, but that's just kind of how they do it. And I may do a video on sharpening these at some point, but so when you're sharpening them, and this is of course just a strop, but you'll sharpen on, you know, one side as you normally would. And then what I do is I just basically treat the other side, I just almost lay it flat, and I just make a couple of passes to kind of knock off the burr. And what it'll do when you're sharpening is it will create a slight micro bevel on this side right here. And so you're going to give it, you know, a little bit of a V-edge anyway, you know, when you're doing that. But that's just kind of what I do when I'm doing these. Maybe I'll do a sharpening video at some point. I've always been hesitant to do a sharpening video simply because, I don't know, it seems kind of boring to me, but I don't know, maybe I'll do one, we'll see. In any case, that's gonna do it here. I'm gonna just kind of wrap it up. Ooh, pardon the noise with that. Get this strop dust, compound dust off there. But yeah, appreciate you checking out the video. As always, go ahead and leave a thumbs up. Let's get the algorithm showing my stuff. That definitely helps out. Leave a comment if you'd like to. Subscribe if you haven't done so already. I certainly would appreciate that. And give me a follow on Instagram at Chuck_Nunface. So yeah, I definitely appreciate you checking out the video, and stay tuned for the next one.